All right, welcome everybody. June 2025. Hard to believe we are almost halfway through the year already. Started the summer season on June 1st. It was, I don't know, it really didn't feel like summer or spring here for a while here the past week, but it did finally warm up, and we'll look at the outlooks and whatnot moving forward. And how that will proceed. But general information, same old, presented by the Kentucky Climate Center at WKU, partnership with NIDIS and the Midwest Drought Early Warning System. Um, Production delivery reflects the contributions of several partners. Of course, the UK Ag Weather Center, WKU, the MESNet, the Kentucky Climate Center, and then Chip Zimmer over at the Division of Water. Next webinar, same time of the month, same time of the day, July 3rd, day before the 4th of July. I didn't realize that. We're going to have a 3-day weekend this year. Awesome. But same time, 2 p.m. Webinar is being recorded, available for viewing on YouTube, on the Kentucky Climate Center's YouTube channel. Just to start off, this is what we were dealing with for most of June, it felt, or May, from what it felt like. Storm after storm after storm. This is just one example, a photo taken from the Kentucky Mesonet Station in Simpson County. This is a shelf cloud, and I know Shane was talking about it in his Twitter post. I took it from there, but kind of cool seeing a shelf cloud, that pink purple color there. A little interesting, something you don't see every day. Normally you see that black and gray cloud coming right at you, but these shelf clouds looks like a shelf up there, usually accompanied by high winds, sometimes damaging winds right behind it. Something we dealt with quite a bit in May of 2025. Looking at the other side of the spectrum, I want to put some good news before we got some of these severe weather slides. But this is from UK Wheat Day on May 13th. Went off without a hitch. Had some stratocumulus clouds up there, but overall, pretty nice day. Looking down there from the Franklin County Mesonet Station on May 8th this year, actually had a double rainbow in play. So we see one over there in the far left, upper left-hand corner, and a faint one just to the right of it. But also, just congratulations to the folks with the Kentucky Mesonet. Big birthday for the network on May 9th. Go back 18 years ago, it was the first Kentucky Mesonet Station when it started recording on their research farm down that way. So since then, have over 80 stations in more than 75 counties here in the state of Kentucky. I'm going to, let's see, admit these people in here. So yeah, we're just going to go over recent conditions, impacts, outlook, summary. Again, same old, same old. So looking at rainfall this past week, the highest totals have been right along just south of the Ohio River. Some folks over there in the Green River region picked up 2+ inches. The northern half of the state, 1 to 1.5 inches plus for most everybody. You go down to the southern fringes near Tennessee, and you see totals drop pretty drastically, going down to the 1/4 inch range for some folks, especially southern Pennyroyal region, even going into the Purchase region. State average the past week, just about an inch, and this has been pretty consistent this past month. Just right around normal for this time of year. Spring season is our wettest season in Kentucky. Moving on to 30-day radar estimated precipitation, observed rainfall amounts according to the Mesonet. So you see those totals skyrocket. Highest totals are now seen across the southern half of Kentucky. There's some folks in the southern bluegrass, southeastern Kentucky topping 7, 8+ inches. Average for this time span is a little under 5.5. So these kind of totals, pretty significant, 7, 8 inches. and just adds to our very wet 2025. We do see totals diminish as you get into the northern bluegrass places up there, Boone County, um, some of the other counties up there, 2, 3 inches of rainfall, but the rest of the state, it's been a soaker. Going back 60 days, state average of 11.42 inches, a little over an inch and a half above normal, keeping with that trend of above normal precipitation. Spots of the southern bluegrass, southern Kentucky seeing 13, 14, 15 inches of rainfall over this 2-month total. So again, 11 and a half inches over a 2-month time period. That's saying something here in Kentucky. Go back 90 days, and the state average is almost 20 inches, 5.69 inches above normal. This is 3 months worth of rainfall. And just to put this in perspective, I'm going to do this in a couple more slides too, but some areas have seen 25 inches of rainfall over this 3-month time period. And 25 inches of rainfall over a 3-month period, putting that in perspective, we average 50 inches a year. So some of these counties have seen half of their annual rainfall these past 3 months during the spring season. Quite significant stuff. So moving on to some of these statistics, all these maps are showing departure from normal precipitation over the past 30 days, 60 days, and 90 days. 60 days and 90 days, some folks are running 8 to 10 inches above normal. Again, they're in central Kentucky, going up in the southern bluegrass. I see southern Purchase, southern Pennyroyal is included in that 60-day departure from mean precipitation. But overall, looking at the preliminary data for May, state average 7.18 inches of rain. So that's about 2 inches above normal. That follows our second wettest April ever recorded in state history, 131 years worth of record on that. You combine that with our 9th wettest, preliminarily speaking, May ever recorded. And over those 2 months, that's a top 5 April, May, wettest April, May we've ever seen. So from the extreme rainfall we saw in February, extreme rainfall in April keeps on coming into the month of May. I will say, as opposed to February and April, when we saw 2 extreme, exceptional rainfall events resulted in devastating flooding for portions of Kentucky, when we look at May, it's been pretty consistent. I've been writing the weekly summary for the crop report, and just looking at the average data on a week-by-week basis, the state has topped 1.4 inches for the past 5 weeks here in Kentucky. So not as much rainfall at one time as we saw in February and April, but it's been consistent. And that's been impacting us on the agricultural side. We'll talk more about that here in a second. But the preliminary seasonal spring total this year for 2025 is 20.03 inches, which is about 5.5 inches above normal. And this would be good for the number 4 all-time wettest spring on record. So a lot of stats there, but bottom line, it's been very wet here in Kentucky this spring season. Now let's push this back a little further, go back to the start of 2025. I took this from the Kentucky Mesonet page. This is showing accumulated precipitation for every Kentucky Mesonet station across the state this year. Looks like we do have maybe some data issues in 1 or 2 of those spots, but you get the idea. Some folks in the Purchase region, Pennyroyal region, central Kentucky have seen 40 plus inches. That's kind of mind-blowing to me. Again, annual average in Kentucky is 50.36 inches. Some folks are 10 inches away from meeting that annual average, and we're still a month out from being halfway through the year. We still have 7 months to go. So we'll see where this ends up in the record books. If you add in that preliminary May average I showed you earlier of 7.18 inches, that takes you to 31.55 between January and May. And looking at the record books, that would break the record in 2011 for the all-time wettest January to May on record. So as it sits right now, we are on track to break a annual wettest year on record in Kentucky. Now, will it stay that way? I don't know. Too hard to say, but it's been an exceptionally wet 2025 thus far. Now, unfortunately, as we got into May, as opposed to the flooding we saw in February and April, severe weather has been a big issue in May of 2025. Unfortunately, the peak of the severe weather was associated with this May 16th severe weather outbreak. It produced a EF4 tornado. This is the biggest tornado we've seen in Kentucky since December 10th of 2021, when we had that long track tornado pass from Fulton County all the way through Breckinridge County. This one was also a long track tornado, not to the extent as 2021, but same type of intensity. It was on the ground for nearly 60 miles as it went through Russell, Pulaski, and Laurel counties. It peaked in strength as it went through Laurel County, and estimated peak wind speeds were 170 miles per hour. Now, I get a lot of people that talk to me, they're like, Matt, how do we know it was 170 miles per hour? What will happen after these events, the National Weather Service will go out and perform a damage survey. And there's several damage indicators they can go off of, whether it's a residential house, maybe it's an apartment building, maybe it's a hospital, maybe it's a school, you name it. And based on the degree of damage to that particular structure, maybe it's even a soft or hardwood tree, we can get an idea of the wind speeds it would take to do that particular amount of damage. So based on the pictures, one picture is down there below. I was watching this YouTube video from ABC News at the time, took a screenshot of it, showing the devastation across the area. But based on this type of damage, the NWS estimated peak winds of 170 miles per hour, which would push this to an EF4 violent tornado. EF4 is on the upper end of the enhanced Fujita scale, only goes up to an EF5. To give you an idea, EF4 is anything above 166 miles per hour, all the way up to 199. Once you get to 200, that's an EF5 tornado. So this was a low end EF4 tornado, but from what I gathered from various sources, the damage that this tornado produced, it went through some pretty structurally sound neighborhoods. And I've seen pictures, some in this picture, of houses completely gone all the way down to their foundation. So you have a well-built home that's all the way down to the foundation, and that's a pretty good sign. It was a violent tornado, and NWS Jackson confirmed. Unfortunately, my heart goes out to all the families involved with this event. There were 19 fatalities associated with this tornado. Went through between 10:30 and roughly midnight. And yeah, it's sad to see these major tornadoes. We've had quite a few this year, and not just in Kentucky, I should say, but across the United States. And we'll look at those here in a second. But before I go on to the next slide, we were in a moderate risk that day. National Weather Service did a fantastic job getting warning out, Storm Prediction Center, you name it, issuing these watches, these warnings. And it wasn't just the tornadoes. That's where all our eyes go. There was also damaging winds, and there was also hail, like we saw in the upper right-hand corner from Plum Springs, Kentucky, 2 to 3 inch hail. So we're talking baseball size. Let me go to the next page here. Western Kentucky also got hit hard from these tornadoes. There were several strong tornadoes across this area. You got an EF2, a couple EF2s down there near Hopkinsville. Peak winds around 120 miles per hour. You go up into Union County, and there was a EF3 tornado in Morganfield, Kentucky, and it had estimated peak winds of 155 miles per hour. So again, this was a high-end EF3 tornado getting close to that EF4 category, a very strong tornado nonetheless. Unfortunately, yeah, injuries were again a thing with this tornado also, but this was a tornado outbreak. Something we hate to see, but we've seen quite a few, it seems like, here in Kentucky recently. Lastly, we had another event on May 30th. This was not a tornado outbreak, but rather one pretty strong one in Washington and Boyle County, southern bluegrass area. This was a little surprising to me. If Kentucky resident wants to chime in with their opinion too, but this happened on the day. Storm Prediction Center wasn't necessarily, it wasn't a high risk day, but what I want to say is it doesn't have to be a moderate high risk or even enhanced risk to produce tornadoes, strong tornadoes at times. So I want everybody to be aware during severe weather situations. Sometimes I have people that just focus on the severe weather when it is a moderate or high risk, but even some lower risk categories can produce strong tornadoes. But this ended up being an EF2 tornado with estimated peak winds of 125 miles per hour. It was only on the ground for 5.5 miles, but had devastating impacts. You see the picture over there on the left-hand corner. This area was located just southwest of Harrodsburg. Unfortunately, there were 14 injuries associated with this tornado and one fatality. So a very bad month, severe weather-wise for Kentucky. Hopefully we're done for the year. We do have some severe weather potential tomorrow, and we'll talk about that here in a few minutes. Looking at the year as a whole, whenever I say it's been a pretty active year severe weather-wise, I want to show you some graphs to show you my point there. This is a graph from the Iowa Environmental Mesonet. They have a resource that allows you to develop graphs and whatnot. Awesome, awesome resource. But this specifically is showing the number of tornado warnings issued in Kentucky accumulated throughout the year. 2011, 2012 were pretty active years for Kentucky. 2012 more so because we had the March 2nd tornado outbreak and tornado warnings skyrocketed that year. We've had several events in 2025 and tornado warning based. We are looking at number 3 as of where we're sitting. And this data goes all the way back to 1986. So third most active tornadic season here in Kentucky since 1986. Now I'm going to change this graph a little bit. We're going to look at the combination. We're going to add in severe thunderstorm warnings. Based on the total amount of severe thunderstorm warnings and tornado warnings issued in Kentucky, we're sitting at number 2 all time with this data going back to 1986. We're sitting just behind 2011 as we start June, and there was a point in the middle of May, we were number 1. So talk about a very active year in Kentucky, severe weather-wise. I think these graphs really show it. I thought this was interesting. NWS Paducah put out this summary, I don't know, a couple of weeks ago, I guess it was, but 54 tornadoes for the year in the Paducah County warning area. Ranks as the 3rd most for any year on record behind 2024 and 2011. 557 miles worth of tornado tracks, shatters the annual record of 450 in 2011. 2011, in a large part, was a major severe weather year across the United States, not just here in Kentucky. Tornadoes by state in their county warning area. Kentucky has seen 11. There's been 9 EF3 tornadoes. The most strong tornadoes in a single year since they had 12 in 1957. And lastly, 4 EF3s in a 10-year period from 2014 to 2023. Now we've had 13 the past 13 months. So pretty wild stuff. They've also had to deal with a couple EF4s, not in Kentucky, but all over in Missouri and Southern Illinois. I believe that Southern Illinois EF4 was associated with that May 16th tornado also. All right, let's switch gears a little bit. Going to temperatures. Depending on where you looked or where you were at in May, it was either pretty warm, maybe it was pretty cool. I always, look back recent history. It feels like it's been a very cool spring in Kentucky. But looking at the data, April, we actually saw above normal temperatures. We get into May. I'm interested to see what the final figures look like. I took this map from the Midwestern Regional Climate Center, upper left-hand corner. They're showing most of the state somewhere between 0 and 2 degrees below normal. There are portions of southern Kentucky actually running above normal for the month. But whenever I look at the same data, but put into a chart, it actually shows that we ran 0.1 degrees above normal for the month. So ultimately, I think we're going to be somewhere around normal. Again, we had warm spells, we had cool spells. I'm showing this graph in the lower right-hand corner from Spindletop Farm right here in Lexington. And there were some days early in the month, this is looking at air temperature in the dark red. We had high temperatures struggling in the 50s and 60s. We get into the middle of May, we have temperatures spike a little bit. I know we had highs top 80 at times. And then we get to the end of May and we had temperatures, we had another cool spell come in and had highs struggling in the 50s and 60s again. Now we just had some warmer temperatures the past few days. Now we got showers, clouds here in Kentucky. So kind of continuing this up and down trend we saw throughout the month. Personally, I'm kind of a fan. If we can hold off on 70+ degree dew points for a little bit longer, I think we'll all accept that. But yeah, definitely some cooler periods during the month of May. We even had some cool nights in the 40s, something we don't typically see. Luckily, we didn't have any major damaging freezes. I know you go back to 2021, I want to say, we had a very damaging freeze on May 9th that year. But this is one day in particular, upper right-hand corner, May 23rd, only had highs. Again, this is getting into the last week of May, but only had highs in the mid-60s across eastern Kentucky and only topping out around 70 in western Kentucky. We should be well above that for this time of year. Normal highs into May running in the upper 70s, low 80s, lows averaging in the upper 50s, low 60s. So running about 10 degrees below normal on this particular day. On May 23rd. Moving on to the U.S. Drought Monitor. Obviously, we've been extremely wet in Kentucky, so we have no issues with drought. In fact, the entire area has seen quite a bit of improvement. We'll look at that in the next slide. But here in Kentucky, completely drought-free. And the last time any part of Kentucky had abnormally dry conditions was just a sliver across southern Kentucky in late January. So 5+ months we've went without any abnormally dry conditions in Kentucky. Hopefully it stays that way. I've had several people comment, they're going, Matt, you better not let that faucet turn off in June. So I hope it stays that way. And we'll keep our fingers crossed. But the entirety of the Midwest looking pretty decent right now. If I move this across the entirety of the United States, Jerry spoke last month. We had drought conditions developing in Florida and up the eastern seaboard there. We've seen a lot of improvement here this past month. We look across the Great Plains region, Nebraska, probably seeing the highest percentages of drought right now. But for the most part, everybody looking pretty good. Sure, normally dry conditions, moderate drought here and there. But yeah, compared to recent years, I think we're in a pretty decent spot across the Midwest. This is a look at the drought monitor class change over the past month. Any place you see green, we've had drought conditions improve. Any place you see that yellow-orange color, you see drought conditions getting worse. Across northern Indiana, you've seen drought conditions getting worse by 2 categories. Across the upper Great Plains region improving. You see a lot of improvement in Kansas, getting into Oklahoma, and then again across the eastern seaboard there. Not seeing near the amount of abnormally dry and moderate drought conditions anymore. Moving on to soil moisture, been wet, no surprise. Topsoil moisture and subsoil moisture is looking pretty good. This is from the last crop report that came out across the United States. Percent adequate topsoil moisture sitting at 68% in Kentucky, subsoil moisture at 70%, and that's percent adequate. Now, where's the other percentages come from? So I include the percent surplus down there. 28% in terms of topsoil moisture, 27% in terms of subsoil moisture. So you add those two with the maps above, and that accounts for your nearly 100% of the state. So we're looking fine in terms of soil moisture in Kentucky at this point in the year. What we want to see as we head into the summer months of June and July. Again, looking at soil moisture anomaly, we have a surplus in Kentucky as of the last day of May in 2025. Looking at that 0 to 10 centimeter relative soil moisture. So looking at the soil profile that's most important for field crops out there. And we're still looking good across the bluegrass state. Stream flows are running above normal to much above normal for most of the state for this time of year. So overall, and I'm going to repeat this later, but I always tell folks, I hate to say that D word in drought, but I'd much rather it be a little wet than a little dry. So you never know going into the summer months. I always say you go 2 weeks without rainfall, you're going to see drought conditions. So if we keep seeing an inch plus a week, I think everybody will be pretty happy. Let's just not get into some of those monsoonal rains like we saw in February and April this year. Looking at Kentucky ag impacts, it's been a slow go for planting progress this year. Corn planting currently sits, this is as of May 25th up here. I want to preface this by saying I found out this week that the USDA Kentucky crop progress and condition report is no more. Not sure how many people were aware on this call, but unfortunately, I'm not sure why. I can take a guess, but statistics will still be pushed through to the national level from the Kentucky NASS office. So we'll just have to get stats on the national level. But as of the last one, corn plant at 70%. This is from the table on May 25th. That is 12% behind the 5-year average at this time. Soybeans plant 52%, 5% behind the 5-year average. I went and got the national stats as of this past Monday. We're still running 9% behind in the state of Kentucky, despite what was a pretty nice week weather-wise. Know a lot of folks were finally able to get out in the fields and actually cut some hay this year. Beans were still 6% behind as of June 2nd. I have been reading some articles, especially those low-lying areas. Preventive planting may be in play for some of those locations, but We'll say on the plus side, warm, wet weather promoting excellent pasture growth. We look at crop conditions up there in the upper right-hand corner. Corn fair at 20%, good at 66%, excellent 13%, pasture conditions 20, 65, and 10. So overall, looking pretty good out there, despite some cooler weather in the past couple of weeks. But winter wheat condition continues to improve. There was some issues in April from all that flooding we saw across Western Kentucky. It has helped that we've had some cooler temperatures in play. Saying that, cooler temperatures are not necessarily a good thing this time of year for your grain crops out there. So we'll talk about that in the next slide. Another negative, delayed hay cuttings. A lot of folks haven't been able to get that first cut until this past week, but we finally got a really good window. It warmed up to something we want to see. You don't want the plants to get too mature, less protein, digestibility, and ultimately leading to less in the way of gains for our livestock across the state. But again, we were finally able to get into the fields and get that first cut. Now, me and Dr. Josh Jackson, we're putting together an extension pub and thought I'd go ahead and show you guys some of the stats we've seen. But I've been talking a lot this past several years about a warmer and wetter climate in place here in the state of Kentucky. And these numbers, they don't look too significant, but we have seen a trend in the average number of baling days during the month of May going in the wrong direction. So with this wetter climate in place. So we went by the 30-year sets of climate normals and just averaged the amount of baling days per city and per year for the month of May. And looking at Bowling Green in specific, 1951 and 1980, that 30-year period, they were averaging 8.1 baling days throughout the month of May. But we look at that average decrease. We actually did see, I guess, a slight of an increase this past few decades, but for a lot of these locations throughout here, maybe not so much. But you see the general trend there going in the wrong direction. Isn't decreasing a lot, but still it can be impactful. If we look at 2025, I went back whenever we calculate this data. I know there's several other statistics we can take into account, but just for simplicity purposes, we counted a baling day for 4 straight days. You cut on day 1, and day 4 you're baling. So day 4 would be considered baling day. If you had another dry day, that would be baling day number 2. And this is strictly based on precipitation. So again, to make it easy, if you had 4 straight days of no precipitation, a trace or less, we counted that 4th day as a baling day. And going by that data, you can see the statistics there in red for 2025. Based on that data, Bowling Green only saw 1 baling day in May of 2025. 3 in Cincinnati, 1 in Evansville, Lexington at 4. London was missing with the severe weather. Louisville at 1, Paducah at 1. So if you're thinking, man, it was a tough year, or it's been a tough year thus far, baling day data really highlights that. So lastly, with this cooler, wet weather, high humidity, cloudy conditions, slugs can become a problem. And we've had some severe infestations across portions of Kentucky. And Dr. Villanueva out in Princeton, our extension entomology specialist, he posted this map, I think it was I guess it was just recently, showing some of those severe infestations across the state. I'm sure there's more, but yeah, it's not been ideal, leading to replants and you name it. So looking forward, this is a look at 7-day forecast liquid precipitation. And another 1 to 2 inches across portions of eastern Kentucky in play. Southern fringes fringes of central Kentucky. You got 1+ inch in play for most of the rest of the state. I guess lucky for us, we're not getting to those red shades to our south and southwest. I'm sure Oklahoma and Texas will welcome that though. But again, the rain keeps on coming here in Kentucky. Unfortunately, that may result in some severe weather today and tomorrow. Today's outlook, we only have a marginal risk for severe weather that increases to a level 2 slight risk. Not the risk categories we saw in May during those that May 16th event, but nonetheless, like I showed you on May 30th, we can still have some strong tornadoes here and there, strong damaging winds, even when we are under a marginal or slight risk. Probabilities aren't quite as high, but probability is still there. Looking at the risk tomorrow, damaging winds carries the highest risk, tornado minimal, still there across the western half of the state, and severe hail, 1 inch in diameter or more. Again, a very small percentage across the western half of the state. Tomorrow, it's mainly damaging winds. Going a little further out, 6 to 10 day outlooks. There's some blue shades there in Kentucky. That signifies below normal temperatures, or the Climate Prediction Center is leaning toward a higher probability that below normal temperatures are going to win out over this 6 to 10 day period of June 10th to 14th. You move over to the precipitation outlook, near normal precipitation. We'll take that, but in early June, still pretty decent amount of rainfall, and we're seeing that right now. 8 to 14 day temperature outlook going out to June 12th to the 18th. Above normal temperatures are favored, along with slightly above normal precipitation. Should say leaning toward above normal precipitation. And then we look at the month as a whole, leaning toward above normal, looking at temperatures and precipitation both ways. So rest of the month, warm and wet, may see some cooler temperatures next week, but overall looks like they are thinking that warmer temperatures will ultimately win out by the end of June. Look at the seasonal precipitation temperature outlook, equal chances for the most part in terms of precipitation. So it really could go either way, maybe leaning a little bit towards above normal precipitation across eastern Kentucky. But across the entirety of the state, they're leaning toward a pretty warm summer in Kentucky. Going all the way out to next winter, we always talk about the El Nino Southern Oscillation. This is the most impactful climate pattern we typically see, I guess, or one that we can see this far out at this point. And it could really go either way. It seems like the past few years we had pretty high probabilities. We either go La Nina or El Nino, and it could really go in any direction as we look later in the year. So I'm not going to spend too much time on that slide. So look at the stream flow outlook for June 2025. It looks like most of the streams are going to be running normal to above normal. Take into account the outlooks, take into account the rainfall forecast, this makes complete sense. U.S. seasonal drought outlook, again, makes complete sense based on a winter outlook in place, not looking at any potential for drought conditions. That said, you go 2 weeks without rain, yes, we'll probably see some abnormally dry conditions pop up here and there, but hopefully those are short-lived and we move on. Wildfire, fire potential outlook, wet conditions in place, no issues in Kentucky. But overall, in summary, rain keeps on falling for us in 2025. Right now, it looks like the preliminary data says it was our wettest January through May on record. We'll see if that trend continues going into June. Rather it be too wet than we go into drought conditions. We endured another tough year in terms of severe weather and flooding. Top 3 in terms of the number of National Weather Service warnings issued. Wet conditions have kept drought out of the picture. Hopefully it remains that way in summer 2025. And ag-wise, just a comment. It's been so wet this spring season. take advantage of those dry windows when they happen. So have the machinery ready to go. I know I've been preaching this to the hay producers across the state. Right when you see that 4 day window arise, be ready to go. So they've been far and few between this spring season. Maybe we'll see some more windows in June, but let's just hope those dry windows are kind of minimal. We don't want to go into drought. So our next scheduled webinar is July 3rd, again, day before the 4th of July. If you have any feedback, you have some questions that aren't discussed here in a second, please feel free to contact myself, Jerry, or Chip at the email addresses listed there. And even though we're not seeing any drought conditions right now, it's still nice for Chip and whatnot to know what's going on across the state so they can monitor across time. So if you got time, utilize that drought and hydrologic for impact report just to let him know what's going on in your neck of the woods. So with that, I'm gonna hang it up, and Tiffany, whatnot, whoever, if anyone has any questions, I'll open that up now.
I don't see any questions in either chat room, so.
Okay, so Shane says that explains why the Clay and Spencer County sites were not online. Okay, that makes complete sense.
Yeah, for that year-to-date map.
So how many stations are you all up to now? What's the official total?
It's 82,
82. Fantastic.
and we've got 3 more scheduled for the year so far.
Can I ask where those 3 are, or is it going to be a surprise?
I mean, I think I can.
Oh, I put you on the spot, Tiffany.
I
Sorry.
know, we like to tease them out, but we do have 2 in Eastern Kentucky and 1 in Western Kentucky. I'll say that much.
Okay. There we go.
We need some more in Eastern Kentucky, so those are going to be huge.
Yeah, for sure. I look forward, if we can get to 1 station every county. I know Jerry always talks about that. That would be absolutely fantastic. So
Yeah, that's definitely our goal. So if we can keep our state funding the way it is, we should be well on our way to that goal.
awesome. Yeah, it's a quiet group today.
Yeah.
That's all right. Everyone's probably just too excited about the Pacers and the starting the NBA finals tonight. So I get it. All right, guys. Thanks for jumping on. Again, next webinar will be scheduled for July 3rd. Not sure if Chip or Jerry's going to take it at this point, but we'll be sure to send you all an email, let you all know. So with that, enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll see you in about a month.